Hello everybody, my name is Hello. Welcome back to this series where we're dealing with Flutter programming, trying to simplify, trying to demystify a lot of the concepts. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about form validation in Flutter. Again, very simple concept. What I'm talking about here is, see, toward the right side of the screen, you'll be seeing a form, a sample form with an email and a phone number. Okay, now this is a form, and let's say I give you an example email. So example at gmail.com. This email will go through fine, but if I give some random letters, it will fail. So if you're writing an application where you're validating a form, you're taking some input from the user, whether they're filling out a sign up page or a login page, something like that, or just filling out a form in general, and you want to validate the fields that they enter. That is where form validation comes into place. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the form widget, and then we're talking about what a form state is and how validators work. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. As always, let's go ahead and close out everything so that we can start from scratch. Now, every time, the first and the most important thing that we do here is to import this line right here, which is package flutter slash material dot dart, and that is something that's always common. Something to keep in mind here is we'll have something called a form key, and this form key maintains form state. Well, not maintains, it's for maintaining form state. That's more accurate. Now let's go ahead and start with the form key. How you declare this form key is by saying final to say that it's a final variable. You say form key is equal to global key, and you have to write the type of it. So you have to do form state. Okay, and then you can close out this line. This form key is very important when you're dealing with the form widget. You're supposed to enter which form key that you're going into, and all of this plays a major role when you're validating your form. Okay, then something to keep in mind is the main method, which is always common as all the other videos that we have here. So the home is home page. And again, here we're going to be talking about a stateful widget because there are two states here, one where it's valid and one where it's not. So based on that, these red things update. Therefore, let's go ahead and create a stateful widget. So STFUL, click the enter button. Let's call this home page because that's what we've been calling it there. Everything is awesome. Now let's go ahead and first do the GUI, then we'll come back to the form and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, let me go ahead and save this so that we get the placeholder and we can build on top of that, right? So let's go ahead and return a scaffold. So scaffold, yeah. And then now what we'll do is, first of all, let's create an app bar, right? So we'll just do an app bar with an app bar widget, and let's just set the title to form validation. Oh, okay, you have to do text, right? So text of form validation. Yeah, if this works, then let's go ahead with body. And now this is where the form widget comes in. Okay, so the form widget is defined as follows. You say form, right? And then you're supposed to give a key. So key will be nothing but the form key variable that we just defined. Then you're supposed to have children. That's where all the form what is that, the input boxes are there, right? So that's where we do that. So let's go ahead and create a column since we're dealing with multiple such input boxes. So let's go ahead with children, and in order to get a text input, the widget is text form field. Okay, there are two parameters actually. One is a decoration, which is also something that if you want you can do, and then something called a validator. So if I just run this by itself, you can just see that you have something like this, but there are also two parameters that you need to put, one being the decoration, because let's say you want some labeling over there. So decoration, let's go ahead and put input decoration, and then I'll just give a quick label, and I'll call this text email. Okay, so something like that. So if I save this, you can actually see that, give me a second. Yeah, it fills with email. Fantastic. Okay, now let's go ahead and duplicate the same line again, and then let's just change this to phone number, for example. Okay, once these two are done, I can actually go ahead, maybe add another button over here. So that one I'll add below, and so that will be elevated button, right? And then on press, let's just leave that out for now. And the child, maybe we'll put a text, and let's call this submit. Okay, if I save this, I should be okay. You need an on pressed function. Okay, for that, for now, let's go ahead and just simply define one empty function. So this will be called void nothing. So we just create an empty function and then we'll pass that as on pressed. Set that to this nothing function, and then child would be this. Let us do a comma over here and then save all of this. You see we get the submit button, we get the email and the phone number. Maybe something to also put here would be a sized box, and let's set the height to maybe 50 for example, so that we have some gap in between this, right? Awesome. So now let us go ahead. Now, of course, you can color this however you want to, but the point of this video is not coloring it. It's to teach you guys what form validation is. So when we say validation, what does that mean? Well, we only, right now, there's no functionality. We only have the GUI, right? So when you enter the email, what happens is nothing. Okay, but we want to validate it. Eventually we want to check whether the email that you enter is or format something at something.com, right? So that is where validation comes in, and to validate something you actually have a parameter called validator inside a form field. Okay, so you can actually do validator and you have to give a function over there. Now this, you can see it takes a parameter called value, and that will be a string since we're entering a string here. So we can't pass functions like nothing here because it does not take a parameter. So now we have to create a function with a parameter. Okay, so how does that look like? Well, let me go ahead and create a function. I'm going to call this function email validation, for example. So email check. Okay, and then I will again in the parameter I will take a string as the input. Now what does this question mark mean after string? Well, first of all, this means returns. Okay, this question mark, this is a parameter, right? The string, this question mark means it can be null or it can be a string. Okay, if it does not, if it should not be a null, then you should give a exclamation mark here. Okay, so if you want it to either be null or a question mark, you can add this. Okay, now let's go ahead with our function over here. Let's just say it takes the string email, right? Let us check if email, right, and this email should not be null, because if it's null I don't want to check it, right? When the email is not null and it's a string, let me go ahead and check whether it contains the at symbol and the email contains the dot symbol. And when we're using and, right, the second condition will only go when the first condition goes in, and we're already checking that it's not null before we're doing this. That means we don't have to add the not null here also, because it's already checked in the before statement. Once this goes through only, and this second statement will go through. Okay, so once that is done, what I will do is inside this, what we will do, we'll set an int a, which will be nothing but the email dot index of this at. Okay, similarly let's go ahead and set an int b, which will be email dot index of, and that will be the period symbol. So what we're checking here is basically whether the dot comes after the at. Okay, so for example at gmail.com, in that case dot comes before the dot comes after the and. Okay, so let's just do that preliminary check over there. So we'll do if if b is greater than a, that is the bth index is greater than the eighth index, let's go ahead and return null. Okay, that means the form is successful. Okay, else what are we going to do? We will return enter a valid email address, for example. Now I'll tell you that's why this return comes, why we're doing this string here in a bit. You'll see that in the code itself when you're trying to run this, and trust me, it'll make a lot of sense then. Okay, so if we have this if statement here, let's also add an else statement. Let's just add enter a valid email address. Okay, once we're done with this, we can actually pass this email check function as a validator over here. Okay, now I try to run this, I do something and I click submit. Wait, nothing happens. Why did we do this? Well, we're not actually submitting the form when you click the submit button. Okay, we've just returned this logic. So let us go ahead and submit this form first, then we'll write some logic for the phone number. Okay, so we return some logic here. How do you submit this form? Okay, that's where the submit form function comes in, when you can add any function that you want to really. So I'm just going to submit the form. Okay, and what this function should do is, see, if form key dot, and this form key is what we defined here, right? Correct. So form key dot current state. Okay, whatever the current state is, that should not be null. Okay, then I will validate this. This is the function that is there in the form keys current state. I am asserting that it's not null. Then I'm trying to validate that. Now there are two approaches that comes here. Okay, whether it's true or whether it's false. So when I do this statement, that means it should be true by if it's true, go inside this block of code. Okay, so what am I going to do here? Okay, something to keep in mind is this line that we're going to type right now is going to be something that you have to maybe by heart, but I'll try to explain what's going on. Okay, so we have a scaffold, right? There's something called a scaffold messenger. Okay, this messenger is very important for sending messages. You see in your application, sometimes things fail and you get one message to the bottom of the screen, right? That's where scaffold messenger works. So what we're going to be doing here is of context, which is our current context, which is our window here. I'm going to show a snack bar. What is a snack bar? Well, that bottom bar which you told, right? That's a snack bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a snack bar widget with the content saying text form validated. Maybe we'll say that form validated, and then I'm gonna set a duration for the snack bar also, because something that you've noticed is when those things come in your phone, it maybe comes for a 1 or 2 seconds, then it goes away, right? So I'm gonna set the duration to a duration of seconds and set it to 2. Okay, once I close this out, I can save this actually. Now what happens? Well, nothing happens because you've not bound this to the on pressed yet, right? So let's just keep it as is, but let's also add an else condition. So that we can just handle both these cases before we do that. Maybe I can just copy paste this stuff again. So you take the messenger, provide the current context, go to the show snack bar function. There you build the snack bar widget with the content saying form validated, and then with a duration of seconds. So maybe in this case, we can just change it to form invalid. Okay. Once we save this, we can actually put this submit form button over here. Submit form. Okay. Now I save this, I run this again. You can see that it says enter a valid email address. Now, if I give 123@gmail.com, it will go ahead and not do anything and also say form is validated if you look at the bottom of the screen now. Okay, that is how that works. Now let us go ahead and add another validator for phone number also, so that you guys get a feel for what this form validations look like. Because in your exam, what you'll be asking is they'll give you 4 or 5 fields. They'll say in each of these fields, these are the validations that need to be taking place. If it's a password, there needs to be a special character. It needs to be more than 8 letters, less than 13 letters. If it's an email, check for that. If it's a phone number, it has to be 10 numbers, something like that. So all of that is something that you're going to be getting as part of your exam. So yeah, let's just do for phone number also to show you what that looks like. So again, string question mark, so that I can return stuff. Okay, before that, let me just tell you guys why we did this. Okay, so if you provide something valid, you see nothing happens here. But if I provide something invalid, you can see that this line right here, enter a valid email address, that's the same thing that we are returning here. That is why we are returning null. If you're returning null, what happens is this red part does not come. It goes through fine. But if you're returning a string, it will provide an error with this red message. Okay, that is why we are returning a string, but it can also be null. Okay, so let us do the same thing now. String also be null. Let's do a phone check, and then let's just pass a string which is also null as the phone number. Okay, now let me just check if phone number, if first of all assert that it's not null, then check whether its length is equal to 10. In that case, let's go ahead and return null. Let's just say it goes through. Else, let's just return enter a valid phone number. Well, are we done? Hello? No. Not only you have to define this function here, you have to add that as a validator to your text form field. So in this particular text field, I'm going to do a comma right here, and I'm going to add a validator with my email. Okay, and maybe it's in the wrong parenthesis, not a comma here, but a comma here along with the validator with this phone check function. Okay, if I save all of this now, and then I click the submit button, you can see first of all, both cases error happens. Why does that happen? Okay, let's go here. We are asserting that it's not null, right? So in case it's null, it'll directly go to this else and it'll return this. Same goes here. Now let me return something that's a good email at gmail.com, and then also I'll give a phone number, say 12345678990. If I submit here, it'll say that the form has been validated. Well, this is form validation for you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're able to understand. Obviously, the comparisons that we did for the email may not be the best validations to have. Maybe you can do something else. You can check whether there's a .com, whether there's a Gmail, whether there's a Rediff mail, whether there's a Hotmail, I don't know, whether there's a Yahoo mail in your email right here. Or you can do a lot, whatever you're thinking of, right? This is the point, basically. You have a text form field. From there, you take some text, some strings. Then you can do whatever operation you want there and either return null, saying that it went through, or return something else. Once all of that is done, you combine all of that using a submit form function, and that calls the validate function, which is there in your form keys current state. Not only do you first assert that the current state is not null, but then only then do you actually validate this. If all of this makes sense, then I think I've done my job here. Thank you so much for watching this video. Maybe this video became a bit longer than the other videos in the series. But if this video did help you, hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in another video. Until then, bye.